In the golden era of tail fins and chrome, when flash ruled the American highway, one car dared to be different, quietly elegant, confidently refined, and unapologetically exclusive. It was the 1956 Continental Mark II, a car that didn't shout for attention, but still turned every head in the room. Backed by Ford but branded as its own elite mark, this masterpiece set out to be nothing less than the finest personal luxury car in the world. But what made the Mark II so special? And why do collectors and car lovers still whisper about it with reverence today? Buckle up, because we're going for a ride into automotive royalty. The Continental Mark II wasn't born from a committee, it was a passion project. In the early 1950s, Ford's top executives wanted to craft a statement piece. This wouldn't just be another car in their lineup, it would be a symbol. A challenge to the likes of Rolls-Royce and Bentley. The idea was to resurrect the prestige of the original 1940 Lincoln Continental, a car Edsel Ford himself had inspired. For the Mark II, every detail had to be perfect. It wasn't designed to compete on volume, but on pure presence and quality. And when it finally debuted not in Detroit, but in Paris, it became instantly clear this was no ordinary American car. While Detroit was building bigger and brasher, Ford had built something quietly regal. At first glance, the Mark II looked nothing like the wild American cars of the 50s. It had no sky-high tail fins, no over-the-top chrome grills. Instead, it wore clean, elegant lines with a long, commanding hood and a tightly tailored rear. It looked more like it had rolled out of Milan or Stuttgart than Dearborn. But make no mistake, this was still very much American under the skin. Power came from a Lincoln Source 368 cubic inch V8, making 285 horsepower, mated to a smooth 3-speed automatic. This gave the Mark II the effortless, quiet power one would expect from a personal luxury cruiser. But the real luxury wasn't just under the hood, it was in the way the car made you feel. It was grace on wheels. Unlike mass-market cars, every Continental Mark II was largely hand-built. This was no factory rush job. It took 6 weeks just to complete the lacquer paint finish, applied in multiple layers and hand-rubbed to a mirror shine. The leather, imported from Scotland and stitched by expert hands. The level of craftsmanship was astonishing, especially for an American vehicle at the time. Air conditioning was the only option. Everything else came standard. From electric windows to premium trim, this was automotive excess, but done with taste. And while its $9,960 price tag might not seem like much today, in 1956, it was more expensive than a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. In fact, Ford reportedly lost about $1,000 on every car sold, simply because production was so labor-intensive. If you drove a Mark II, you weren't just a car owner, you were part of a very exclusive club. Fewer than 3,000 were ever built, and many ended up in the hands of the rich and famous. Frank Sinatra cruised Hollywood in his. Elvis Presley parked one at Graceland. Even President Dwight D. Eisenhower had one. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement of taste, power, and privilege. Nelson Rockefeller, one of America's wealthiest men, also joined the Mark II club. These were people who could have had anything, and they chose the Mark II. That kind of celebrity endorsement wasn't bought, it was earned, and it helped cement the Mark II as a lasting icon in automotive history. Despite its elite status and striking presence, the Mark II was a financial misstep. Ford had set out to build the finest car in America, and succeeded, but the cost was just too high. In just 2 model years, production ended. The standalone Continental division was folded back into Lincoln. Yet, the Mark II's influence never faded. It set a standard for quiet luxury and timeless design that Lincoln would chase for decades to come. Today, collectors covet the Mark II not just because it's rare, but because it represents a moment in American automotive history when style, substance, and ambition were perfectly aligned. It was a car that dared to be different and succeeded in becoming unforgettable. The 1956 Continental Mark II wasn't about being the fastest or flashiest. It was about making a statement without ever raising its voice. It was a bold experiment in luxury, crafted by visionaries and driven by legends. Though its time was short, its impact was profound. And for those lucky enough to own one today, the Mark II isn't just a car. It's a piece of rolling art, a whisper of elegance in a world that too often shouts. By the early 60s, American car design was deep in an identity crisis. The outrageous chrome, the rocket-inspired fins, everything that had dazzled in the 50s now felt tired, excessive, and gaudy. But in 1961, Lincoln did something radical. It pressed reset. The result? The all-new Lincoln Continental. With its clean lines, crisp design, and understated sophistication, this car didn't just save the Lincoln brand, it redefined American luxury. And in the process, it became a rolling symbol of a new era, sleek, modern, and dignified. Let's explore how the 1961 Lincoln Continental became one of the most iconic vehicles in U.S. history. At the end of the 1950s, Lincoln Lincoln was in trouble. Its cars were huge, overwrought, and failing to connect with buyers who were growing weary of post-war excess. Sales were dropping, and the future looked bleak. That's when Ford made a bold decision. It handed the reins over to Elwood Engel, who took inspiration from a rejected Thunderbird concept and transformed it into something completely new. The 1961 Lincoln Continental was smaller, sharper, and miles more refined than anything Lincoln had built before. The excess chrome was gone, tail fins were dead, and in their place stood a confident, squared-off form that looked more European than American. It was a design so clean, it didn't need to shout to make an impression. Lincoln had just rewritten the playbook, and it worked. One of the most defining features of the 1961 Continental was its rear-hinged back doors, nicknamed suicide doors. It was a design choice that was bold, practical, and instantly iconic. These doors didn't just look cool, they made getting in and out of the car more elegant, almost ceremonial. Available in both a four-door sedan and a four-door convertible, the car stood out in any crowd. And just in time, too. A youthful new president was stepping into the White House, and the stylish Kennedy family needed a car that matched their aura. The 1961 Lincoln Continental became the official state limousine, a perfect pairing of sophistication and modern American power. For Lincoln, it wasn't just a comeback, it was a coronation. While its exterior styling was the headline, the 1961 Continental didn't skimp on performance or engineering. Under the hood, it packed a 430 cubic inch V8 that delivered smooth, effortless acceleration. Mated to a 3-speed automatic transmission, the Continental wasn't built for speed but for grace. It glided over roads with the calm, composed ride you'd expect from a luxury flagship, and Ford backed it all up with a level of build quality that was unheard of at the time. Each car underwent a 200-point inspection before leaving the factory. The result? A ride that felt as solid as it looked, quiet, controlled, and confident just like the people who drove it. For all its elegance, the 1961 Lincoln Continental is also forever tied to one of America's darkest days. The very limousine that President John F. Kennedy rode in, customized and extended from a '61 Continental, was the vehicle he was riding in during his assassination in 1963. That moment cemented the car in American history, not just as a luxury icon, but as a witness to tragedy. And yet, just like Jackie Kennedy, who continued to embody grace and strength in the face of unimaginable loss, the Continental endured. It became more than just a car. It was a cultural touchstone, elegant, somber, and dignified, a symbol of both an era's promise and its heartbreak. Today, the 1961 Lincoln Continental stands as one of the most admired and collectible American cars of all time. It was more than a design reboot. It was a philosophical shift, a statement that luxury didn't have to be loud, that refinement, balance, and thoughtfulness could be just as powerful as flash and flair. The car's legacy lived on for years, influencing Lincoln's design language well into the 1970s. And for collectors, owning a '61 Continental, especially one with suicide doors, is like owning a piece of American history. It's timeless, it's dignified, and it remains, to this day, one of the coolest cars ever built in Detroit. In a decade defined by change, the 1961 Lincoln Continental wasn't just a new car, it was a new idea. Clean, confident, and forward-thinking, it marked the moment when American luxury matured. Whether rolling through Washington or cruising through the suburbs, the Continental made a statement that still resonates today: elegance never goes out of style. By the late 1960s, Lincoln was at a crossroads. Sales were sluggish, the brand was bleeding money, and Cadillac was dominating the personal luxury market with its flashy Eldorado. That's when Ford's fearless executive, Lee Iacocca, made a bold move that would change everything. His plan? Take the underpinnings of a Thunderbird, slap on a Rolls-Royce-style grille, and create a car that would not only compete, but crush the competition. The result? The 1968 Lincoln Continental Mark III. It didn't just revive a struggling division, it became a symbol of American luxury muscle. Let's dive into how this beast of a coupe saved Lincoln from the brink. When Lee Iacocca gave his infamous directive, put a Rolls-Royce grille on a Thunderbird, it sounded almost too simple, but that no-nonsense vision led to one of the most profitable and important cars in Ford history. The Mark III shared its platform with the Thunderbird, which kept development costs low. But the styling? That was all Lincoln. It had a long, sculpted hood, a formal roofline, and that unmistakable upright grille that screamed high-end. Priced at $6,585, it wasn't cheap, but the real genius was in the margins. Nearly $2,000 of that price tag was pure profit. In a single model year, the Mark III turned Lincoln from a financial drain into Ford's most profitable division. It wasn't just just a hit, it was a lifeline. Eldorado had been the king of personal luxury coupes since its debut, but Lincoln had a plan to dethrone it. The Mark III offered a more restrained, stately appearance that appealed to buyers looking for luxury without the excess. And people noticed. The car was bold, elegant, and intimidating all at once. Its clean lines, hidden headlights, and that signature grille gave it an unmistakable road presence. In fact, the Mark III outsold the Eldorado in its very first year, a stunning achievement that sent shockwaves through the luxury market. Lincoln didn't just compete, they conquered. Sure, the Mark III looked like a high-end cruiser, but under the hood, it was hiding a beast. Power came from a massive 460 cubic inch, 7.5-liter V8 engine that delivered a jaw-dropping 500 pound-feet of torque. This wasn't just about comfort. This car could move. Weighing in at nearly 5,000 pounds, the Mark III was no lightweight. But despite its bulk, Motor Trend managed to clock it from 0 to 60 in just 8.6 seconds. That kind of performance was impressive, especially in a car designed more for prestige than speed. The Mark III was proof you didn't have to sacrifice power for luxury. You could have both, and in generous amounts. Inside, the Mark III was all about indulgence. Plush leather seats, thick carpeting, real wood trim, and chrome accents gave the cabin a feeling of quiet opulence. It didn't matter if you were behind the wheel or riding in the passenger seat, this car made you feel important. It came standard with features like power windows, power seats, and even a Cartier-branded clock. It was the kind of car that turned every drive into an occasion. Lincoln had found the perfect balance between classic American styling and modern-day luxury. It wasn't about being flashy. It was about feeling like you had arrived without having to say a word. The 1968 Lincoln Continental Mark III didn't revolutionize technology. It didn't break boundaries. But what it did do better than almost any car of its time was save a legacy. Without the success of the Mark III, Lincoln might not have survived into the 70s, let alone into the 21st century. It kicked off a 15-year run of profitable land yachts that kept the brand alive and relevant. Today, the Mark III is remembered not just for its style and performance, but for its impact. It proved that bold ideas, smart business moves, and sharp design could turn a struggling division into a powerhouse. In short, it didn't just save Lincoln, it redefined it. The 1968 Lincoln Mark III was a game changer. Born from a bold idea and built with a business-savvy blueprint, it delivered the perfect mix of profit, power, and prestige. It didn't need to be the fastest or the most advanced. It just needed to make a statement. And it did, loudly and clearly. Thanks to this one car, Lincoln earned its place in the Luxury Hall of Fame and found a new lease on life. Not bad for a car that started as a simple idea. Put a fancy grille on a Thunderbird.